accent is slightly different. I'm the token POM at the event this year. And my name's Paul Davison. I'm from a company called Proteus PR in England. And we're a specialist PR agency. We specialise in helping companies get planning permissions for difficult things. And in the United Kingdom, one of the most difficult things to get a planning permission for at the moment is wind. The Renewables UK, which is the trade body for wind in the United Kingdom, says that the success rate for planning permissions for wind without going to a public inquiry is around about 25%.
Well, you're now joined us just as the sun again is starting to go down, this time after day 2 here at Ecogen 2011 in Brisbane. And today was the day when we were holding the session that we were chairing on the development of wind energy here in Australia. And I think it's quite interesting that of a conference this big, there's only one session on wind. The majority of the sessions were to do with solar, a little bit on geothermal, a little bit on biomass, but the majority is on solar. This was the only session on wind. And the way I described to the conference was I said that if you're trying to get a wind development through, then it's a bit like the old circus trick of actually spinning plates on sticks. And some of the plates are quite small and some of them are quite big. And if a small one comes off, it's not too bad. It's a bit embarrassing. You put a new plate on, you get going. If a big plate comes off, it can take the whole project down with it. And what we were talking about in our conference session were the big plates, as I see them. And the first big plate really is to do with the technology itself, the suitability of the technology to deliver. The second plate is to do with gaining public acceptance to host renewable energy production sites such as wind farms in their communities. And the third and final area is making sure you're managing the policy area as well. The first presentation was given by Joseph Krieger-Tadic from Alstom, and what he was talking about was the tremendous improvements which have happened in the technology. 300% improvement in the efficiency and the energy generation which comes from wind turbines, and that's been generated in about a 12-year period, something that the industry should be proud of. The second presentation was by Sandra Nielsen from Entura in Melbourne, and she's a social scientist, and she was talking about different techniques for engagement with communities when you're trying to actually get planning permissions. Now actually what Sandra said was she thinks she wants to see far less PR in the development area for renewables, and when you look at her definition of PR, I actually completely concur with her. She's talking about glossy, fancy spin and selling the technology to communities, and we all know that that approach actually doesn't work. The area where I really did disagree with Sandra wasn't on the actual bits and pieces of how you engage with communities, it was actually the time frame that might be available to do it. She was looking at anything from 9 months to 12 months to actually build trust between a developer and a community before you submit a planning application. I think the best that I would like to see would be maybe 3 to 4 months, because under the new localism bill, that's the sort of time frame that we're looking at. And the third and final presentation was from Ken McAlpine down at Vestas, where Ken was talking about the policies. Now, I've talked about policy yesterday and I'm not going to repeat that, but one of the key things that he did draw attention to was the present administration's new initiative where they're looking at a renewable energies target. Now that for the first time provides Australia with a very clear steer on what types of technology they want, how much they need and by when. And that's delivering a degree of certainty that's required to help drive investment into the area. But the point that was mentioned today, which is just a little bit worrying, is that we need to remember that this renewable energies target, this RET, is not enshrined in stone. It's an initiative of this current new administration, and this administration is one of the most unpopular governments that Australia's had for many years, and if this government goes, the RET could go as well. So we've got a lot from today's session. It's definitely worth having a look online to see the papers if you can get access to them. The other thing that I would definitely recommend you also do is have a look at Victorian wind farms. Again, looking at this wind farm down there, which failed quite recently. And something which came out today was that it suggested that the Victorian government could be looking at a 2-kilometre exclusion zone around wind turbines. In other words, you can't build a turbine within 2 kilometres of your nearest neighbour. Now, obviously, this has got echoes of the recent House of Lords debate we had in London, where we were looking at potentially limiting it to 2 miles. So we want to keep an eye on what's happening in terms of different governments and their approach to these proximity principles in terms of residents and turbines to make sure we're not getting ourselves bottled in too small an area. So it's definitely worth having a look. Tomorrow I'll be talking to you about the views of Citygate, where we have the MD of Citygate out here talking about the future investment on a global scale, and also talk a little bit about the Green Party, who are going to be here tomorrow talking about their changing attitude towards this government in Australia and its approach to generating renewable energy. So I'll see you tomorrow.